Hey guys, it's Jessica from Peace Love Books, and today I'm here with a long-awaited video on my part because I have been reading this series for 8 weeks and I have been waiting to make this video, and I know that Lisa and Lacey already made this video. I will link theirs down below, and that is my review of the Bridgerton books by Julia Quinn. It is an 8-book series, but I think there are a couple of spin-off books slash prequels slash short story books that kind of count in here, and then there are a couple spin-off series as well. I actually started the Smythe Smith series, which is really good too. I just finished Just Like Heaven, but that's gonna be something completely different from this video. But I have all 8 books right here to chat with you about. So I'm going to talk about my reviews of each book, what they're about, and then I'm going to rank them from my least favorite to my most favorite. So I do have the original editions of every single book, so I will show you the step backs of them as I talk about them. The first book to talk about is The Duke and I, with the original back cover step back. This is the only one that has the back cover. All the rest of them have the step back on the inside of the front flap, but this is the first edition, so it has the raised font. I did have this edition of a later printing, so the font isn't raised anymore, but you know it's first edition when it has that raised font. Just if you're wondering, for historical romance collectors like myself. This one is the first book in the series, and it is Daphne's. The Bridgerton series follows 8 children, and they are all named alphabetically, and so the books are mostly in order except for some of the daughters. So this is actually Daphne's story. She is child number 4, but because of the time period, women got married a lot earlier than men did. I think most of our Bridgerton men, except for Gregory, whose book I just finished, were in their 30s when they got married, and Daphne is very young. She's in her early 20s, but she is the eldest daughter and she needs to get married off, so it is her story in this one, and it is a fake dating brother's best friend trope, and there are trigger warnings for quite a few of these books because of the backgrounds of the characters, and especially in this one there is that scene that everyone knows and everyone's been talking about. I will tell you the trigger warnings as we get to them. So in this one there's trigger warnings for emotionally abusive parents to a child, and also there is a consent, non-consent, questionable scene in here. Depending on who you are, you have different opinions about if the scene was consensual or not, and if it was too far or not. So I will just say that there is a scene in here between Daphne and Simon, our main characters, where consent is questioned. So there is that. There is also a death of a parent in here in the beginning. It is in the very prologue of the book. So a lot of our dark things happen in the prologues of the books because Julia Quinn likes some damaged characters who go through a lot before getting their happily ever after. And so Simon has a stutter, and he as a child was hated by his father because his father's the Duke. He wants to have the perfect son. His mother miscarried over and over and over again, or lost the child in birth, until she finally had Simon and died having him because the doctors told her, your health is at risk, you will probably die if you have another child. But to please the father, she did it. She had a child and then she died. There's a lot of very triggering content just in the prologue of this book, so keep that in mind. But in this one, Daphne is entering society and she needs a husband, but she has 3 overbearing big brothers, Anthony, Benedict, and Colin, specifically Anthony, who are scaring off all of her potential suitors. So her and Simon meet, and the meet cute is different in the book than it is in the movies. I won't spoil it for you, but they end up meeting, and they meet before Simon knows that she is Anthony's younger sister. Him and Anthony went to school together. They're pretty close. They're friends, and so they strike up a bargain to fake court so that the mothers will stop bothering Simon, and so that people would get jealous and be interested in Daphne. So they start fake dating. It doesn't last that long actually in here. I thought it'd be a lot longer, the fake dating, but they do fake date, and their romance goes from there. Obviously they fall in love with each other. I really enjoy this. I do think I have a reading vlog for this if you're interested. I'll link that down below. The questionable scene I did not appreciate. I think it is much worse in the book because Simon's drunk when it happens versus in the show, but they both handle it differently. I think that both should just not have had it whatsoever, so I did drop my star rating down to a 4-star. I think that Daphne should have had a lot more repercussions from what happened, and she didn't really acknowledge that it was wrong from what I remember. I read this 8 weeks ago, and I've read 8 other books since this in the Bridgerton series, so this one's the one I remember the least, but I love this as an introduction. I love all of the characters. Violet is amazing as the mother of the 8 kids. I just loved how much we got of Anthony, Benedict, and Colin in here. Colin is just the fun, loving brother. He's amazing. Anthony's the overbearing, protective brother. I loved him as well. This book is just such a great start to the series. I ended up giving it 4 stars. I really enjoyed the romance. It was very sweet. There are a lot of marriage of conveniences though in this series, especially when I was reading them back to back to back. I don't want to tell you whose is marriage of convenience versus whose is like they love each other and want to get married versus they fall in love after they're married. I won't tell you spoilers, but I did enjoy this one a lot. Next, we have Anthony's story in The Viscount Who Loved Me. Anthony is the eldest brother of the Bridgerton family. He is the eldest child, and this is the original edition with this gorgeous 2-page step back. I really love Anthony's step back. And in this one, Anthony decides it's time for him to find a wife, but because of his past with his father, he decides he's never going to love anybody. So he's just looking for a wife who is of high standing, who would make a great Viscountess. And so his dad died when he was around 18. Anthony was. So his dad was in his 30s, and so Anthony's adamant that he is going to also die in his 30s, and so he is just very traumatized by his father's death, and he is emotionally not able to overcome this grief, and we see that so much in this book. So I'm interested to see if the show will address that, because his father died from a bee sting, and what was horrifying about that was that it was his second time being stung. And so Julia Quinn actually has an author's note at the end about Anthony, because I was annoyed by how adamant he was that he was going to die young and he couldn't love just because of his father. But she mentions in here people who lose parents young like that have this sense that they're gonna just end up like their parents too, and so I appreciated her having that note in here, as well as the note about the bee sting and how some people don't have their reaction until the second time they are stung by a bee, which I thought was very interesting. But now he's terrified of bees, which is a scene in here as well, and he is just very closed off and hardened because of the loss of his father. So there is loss of a loved one in here and grief, and that is the triggering content in here, especially with the prologue in here. But Anthony's romance is with Kate, and Kate is a fan favorite. This is a fan favorite. This wasn't my favorite book. I ended up giving it 4 to 5 stars because Anthony was so adamant he didn't want to marry anybody. In the beginning, he sees Kate's sister. Kate is considered a spinster, and her sister is on the market, and like, not the market, but like on the market to be married. She's looking for a husband as well, and everyone knows how close Kate and her sister are, and so what happens is they all try to impress Kate and be nice to Kate because they know that'll look good for her sister. And so everyone's nice to her, and at the ball where she meets Anthony, she has a dance with Colin, and it's hilarious. Colin is just a comedic relief we need in this series. He's amazing. And then she starts spending time with Anthony because he's kind of courting her sister, because he's interested in her sister, because he's like, she would probably make a great Viscountess for me. I'll never love her, but she'll be a great person to be in society with, to raise a family with. It'll be awesome. But of course, him and Kate end up falling in love, and he is again just very adamant that he can't love anybody, which was just getting old to me by the end. That's why I dropped it down to a 4-star. But Anthony is just your angry, brooding, mean hero until he meets a woman who can put him in his place. So that's really what this one explored, but it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. Not my favorite of the series, like I said. Anthony was just a little too frustrating to me, but I'm loving his character in the show. Can I tell you how excited I am for season 2 for having Anthony and Kate? I'm so excited. But that is my thought on The Viscount Who Loved Me. And now we're getting to book number 3, which is An Offer from a Gentleman, which is actually a Cinderella retelling, and this one has this gorgeous 2-page setback. I love that. This is Benedict's book. This is the one I was not knowing what to expect going in, because Benedict isn't really explored that much in the first 2 books, which I'm going to mention the show again. It does really well actually developing Benedict's character where the books didn't. So we didn't really know a lot about Benedict, but Benedict is kind of like the forgotten brother. He's always like, I'm just acknowledged as a Bridgerton. Oh, I'm number 2. He feels like he has no identity apart from being the second Bridgerton child, and so he really wants an identity for himself, which he explores in here. And our love interest is Sophie. Sophie is actually a servant, and she is the bastard child of a duke, I think. I don't remember the social standing of her father, but her father is titled, and he has her out of wedlock. And so her father kind of raises her, but doesn't acknowledge that she's his bastard, but raises her as a child, and then she gets a stepmother, and her stepmother absolutely detests her. So when her father passes away, I can't tell you a spoiler, but she ends up staying with her stepmother, and her stepmother treats her like a servant. So it's like Cinderella. She waits hand and foot on her stepmother, and so she's just like another servant in the household, but she doesn't get paid. So she's basically a slave for her stepmother. And then things happen, and then there's a ball with the Bridgertons that her stepmother and stepsisters are going to, and so she's very jealous, and the other maids in the household help her get dressed and go to the ball. It's a masquerade. She meets Benedict. Love at first sight. They dance together. Benedict is just head over heels in love. He's never experienced this before. But of course, she leaves. He never sees her again. And then we flash forward quite a few years, and Sophie's actually kicked out of the house, and she ends up meeting Benedict as the servant Sophie. He has no idea that she's his masked loved one from the ball. He has no idea who she is. He only has the glove that she left, so it's not a shoe, it's a glove. And he knows like what family it's from, but he never found Sophie. But he feels like he'll never have that love again. And so he's kind of conflicted when he starts falling for Sophie, who's a servant, and he's like, but what about my beauty that I had fallen in love with earlier? And so the romance goes from there. I absolutely adored this. This I gave 5 out of 5 stars. I don't know what it was about this book, about Benedict. I fell in love with it. Benedict starts exploring wanting to be a painter as well, so that's in here. His character development wasn't as good in this book and in the series so far. I love this romance. I love the forbidden aspect, because then Sophie doesn't want to be with him. Since she is a bastard child, she never wants to have one of her own, and she knows she can never be with someone of high standing because they'd never be able to get married, so her only option is to be a mistress. But she's like, no, I can never be that because that's what my mother was. And it was just such complex feelings and reasonings why these people couldn't be together, and it was so realistic, and it wasn't for like miscommunication or something annoying. It was valid why she didn't want to be with him, and he just is conflicted because he's like, well, I can't marry you because you're a servant. But it's so good. Violet, again, the mother of the Bridgertons, is amazing in here. I loved this one. 5 out of 5 stars. Alright, we are almost halfway through. The next one was the one I think is also a fan favorite that I was super excited for. That is Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. This is Penelope and Colin's book. Finally. So this one, again, gorgeous setback. And what's funny though is that Colin eats all the time, and he definitely has 6-pack abs here. And I'm like, if he's munching down all those sandwiches wherever he is, I don't think he'd have a 6-pack back then, but it's fine. This one, Colin and Penelope. So this one jumps quite a few years. Colin and Penelope are older. Colin is now in his 30s. I don't remember how much later this one is, but Colin's now in his 30s. He was in his 20s in the previous book. He's only slightly older than Daphne in the previous book. And so in this one, we know that Colin and Penelope have a past because Penelope and Colin always dance together at balls because Penelope's a wallflower. She has to wear yellow all the time because her mother thinks yellow looks good on her. She's a redhead. It's not the most aesthetically pleasing colors together, as you see in the show, and so in this one they have a past, like, so they have scenes in the previous books, a little bit of some antagonism going on as well that kind of broke my heart in the previous books. I'm not going to spoil it though. So in this one, Colin comes back from like being abroad, and it's his romance with Penelope. They're friends. It starts off as friends. Then Colin kind of slowly starts seeing Penelope in a new light, and in this one, a huge plot is trying to uncover who Lady Whistledown is. I know the show's already revealed it. At the very end of season 1, it's revealed. We don't get to know until the end of book 4. And so this one, a lot of it is, I think Lady Danbury is the one who said, whoever figures out who Lady Whistledown is, I will offer them a sum of money. And so everybody tries to figure it out. We have Eloise trying to figure it out, which she did in the show in season 1, but it doesn't happen until this book. And that's a big plot line in here. And so everyone trying to figure out who Lady Whistledown is while Colin and Penelope are slowly falling in love. And it's so cute. This one though, I didn't love as much as everyone else has. I don't know why. I think Colin annoyed me with how things occurred, of what he wanted out of life and how he felt about what Penelope wanted out of life. But he was so insecure about himself. I'm like, you're Bridgerton, you have so much money, you're a man, you have so many things available to you, and now you're gonna throw a fit because you're insecure. That was a little annoying to me because he is so privileged during this time period and won't acknowledge it. It was annoying to me, but I still really enjoyed the romance. I think I gave this one 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was cute. I love Colin and Penelope so much, so I enjoy this one. Alright, we are now on to the last 4. So the next one is To Sir Philip with Love. This is Eloise's story. This one has this setback, which I really like that one. Love the red dress. This one happens right near the end of this book. So we had a time jump in this book, but then now we have all three of the next ones occurring about the same time. When he was wicked, though, occurs a little bit before. It's weird. The timelines kind of all mesh together with these three. And so in this one, it's Eloise's story, and she's really sad because Penelope got married. And Eloise and Penelope are wallflowers. They're like, we're just going to be spinsters. We're not going to get married. And she's 28, but now her best friend's married. And she's like, well, okay. And what happens is she's actually been writing letters to Sir Philip. Sir Philip was married to her cousin Marina, and Marina passed away, and to write as her condolences, she wrote to Sir Philip, and then they never stopped writing. The beginning of this, though, is very, very dark and triggering if you have any triggers for loss of a loved one and suicide. So keep that in mind going into this one. I was very shocked when I went into this. So know that going in, but we do have the beginning where Sir Philip loses his wife, and he has 2 children, and so he really needs a new wife because he's not really close with his kids. He doesn't know what to do with them, and he is just kind of lost. And so Eloise and him write, and then they write for a year, I think, or 2, and then he's like, why don't we marry? And Eloise is like, what? And they've started to really like each other through their letters, and so Eloise just shows up. She doesn't accept or deny his proposal. She just shows up at his house, and she has no idea he had kids, and they court, and it's adorable. He is a botanist, I think. He does a lot in the greenhouse. He just stays at his estate. He's a sir. He's not really titled, I guess. I don't know what level of hierarchy sir falls under, but he's just hanging out at his house. Oh, and there is also trigger warning for child abuse because Sir Philip does have a past with that. So again, be aware of that going into this, but he just doesn't know what to do with his kids, how to raise them, and he's still very traumatized over losing his wife. And so Eloise ends up actually having a lot of fun getting to know his kids, and they're menaces. They pull pranks on each other, and she's like, I have 7 brothers and sisters. I'm a pro at pranks and just being devious with children. And so it was really fun. This one is one of my favorites of the series. I give it 5 out of 5 stars. I just adored Philip. He's one of my favorite heroes of the series. He just doesn't know what to do. He's a little lost. He just needs help. And so he gets out with Eloise, and I love their romance so much. 5 out of 5 stars. One of my favorites of the series. And then we have another one that was one of my favorites because Francesca's not really in the series at all. In one of the books, it was like, oh, Francesca's in Scotland with her husband. And I was like, when did Francesca get married? So we have one, he was wicked, and this one has this step back, a little similar to the previous one. She's got a little pinky red dress going on. But this is Francesca's story, and Francesca's a widow. So her husband actually ended up passing away. Again, trigger warning for loss of a loved one. It happens in the prologue of this book. And the synopsis, though, is the fact that Michael, her husband's best friend, fell in love with her the minute he saw her hours before her wedding. So he's been madly in love with her but can't do anything about it. His best friend, I think they're cousins, is married to her. So he's around all the time. They're all really close friends, and then her husband passes away. She was really close with him, and it was very traumatizing to all of them. And Michael actually inherits everything because he's the closest male relative. He ends up leaving for 4 years, and then he finally comes back, and Francesca's really sad because they were best friends and he just left her to grieve. But then they're talking again, and this one, just like with Penelope and Colin, she doesn't really see him as something more until later on in this book, but oh my gosh, it was so good. I loved the tension between them. I loved the angst because they don't want to be together because her husband's dead and it's her husband's best friend, and that's just a no-no. They just have so much guilt over their loss and not wanting to be together. This one was extremely steamy as well. It was so good, and they're just friends, so they have a lot of just banter and funny moments, and I really loved it so much. This one I gave 5 out of 5 stars as well. Alright, then we have the last 2 Bridgerton books, which I feel like are the least Bridgerton-y, especially this one. I feel like the ending of the 8th one does have a lot of the Bridgertons in them, but Gregory and Hyacinth are the last 2 Bridgerton siblings, and they're really young throughout the series, so we really don't get to know them. Just like with Francesca, we don't really get to know them throughout the series, but we get to know them in their own books, and Gregory and Hyacinth are close in age, so we do get both of them in each other's books. So the 7th book is It's in His Kiss, and this one has this really pretty step back. I really love the color of her dress. And this is Hyacinth's book. She's just a bundle of fun. She was so cute when she was little because she had a little funny relationship with Simon in the first book because she was so young. And in this one, it's finally her romance. And she is really close with Lady Danbury. So if you're a Lady Danbury fan, you're going to love this book. I was reading this while watching season 1 of the show, and I was loving how much Lady Danbury we got in the show because she's so much in here. So she's super close with Lady Danbury. They hang out all the time. She reads to her every Tuesday. day, Lady Danbury's grandson shows up, and his name is Gareth, and they end up spending a lot of time together and just falling in love. And it's so fun because Gareth actually inherits a notebook from his father, and there's a lot of animosity between him and his father. They really don't like each other. So there is some sort of scandal that happened with Gareth, and I won't say what it is. I don't remember if it's a spoiler or not, so I'm not going to say what it is, but his father hates him. And so Gareth inherits this notebook from his great-grandmother or grandmother. He inherits a notebook, someone gave it to him, but it's all written in Italian, and so he ends up having to ask Hyacinth for help. She knows a little bit of Italian, it's a little rusty, but she does her best because her governess knew Italian and taught her some, and so she's helping him translate this notebook. And there's these hidden jewels somewhere in his house where his dad lives, but he can't go there because his dad hates him, and so they have to sneak around a lot. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of espionage and secrets, and I feel like this had more of a external plot than all the rest of them do. This one they actually like have something they need to achieve and like are working towards, which I think was a lot of fun, and then they fall in love together, and it was just a lot of fun. This one was one of them where, just like with When He Was Wicked, the guy just falls head over heels for the girl and isn't afraid to deny it, which I loved. I feel like that's what all the last three are, because Michael, Gareth, and Gregory all just are unashamed in the fact that they really are into the girl, and I really love this. I think I gave it 4.5 stars. It was the least Bridgerton-y of them all because I think we really only got Gregory in here, and it was fun seeing Gregory and Hyacinth's banter, but I would have loved to see more of the Bridgerton family in here. But overall, this was really cute. I just loved the romance in itself, so I gave it 4.5 stars. And the next one I finished literally half an hour ago, and that is On the Way to the Wedding. This is Gregory's book, and so this one has a really fun step back where she's in a wedding dress, and in this one Gregory is actually pretty young. He's 26, which I was surprised to hear when they were talking about it, but he in the beginning is like, I want love, because he's seen his brothers and sisters all fall in love. So unlike all three of his brothers, he's like, I need love. I want someone to love, and he's looking for it. And so he lays eyes on Hermione, and he's like, she's the one. And the romance is actually with Hermione's best friend. So Hermione's best friend Lucy, or Lucinda, actually says, okay Gregory, I'll help you win her over, because she's actually in love with someone else, but like he's not of high standing, and so to give her a better life, you'll do fine, I'll help you. And obviously that crashes and burns, and along the way they fall in love with each other. I thought it was so adorable, and there was a lot of action in the end, which I was surprised by. I love this. I'm giving it 5 out of 5 stars. I just really loved how Gregory, again, was just so adamant about his love for our heroine, and he wanted her, and he's like, I'm in love with you, just like the other two books. Because the other previous ones, the men are really jaded about love in the first books in the series, and so I really love a man who acknowledges that he's in love and will do anything to win over the girl because he knows that they'll be happy together. And the girls might have reservations external to love, so they do love the guy, but he's like, I don't care about society, we're gonna be happy together. And so I really loved that, and that's what happened in this one. He even like almost ruins his reputation trying to win her over, which I absolutely loved. We get tons of the Bridgerton family in here too. So we have Anthony and Kate in the beginning, Colin shows up, Hyacinth is there, and Daphne shows up a little bit, and then we have Violet as well. I loved seeing all the Bridgertons for this last Bridgerton book, and I'm so sad the series is over, but I really enjoyed this one as well. 5 out of 5 stars. Just a great ending to the series. And that is my review of all 8 Bridgerton books. If you can tell, the lowest I've rated one of the books is 4 stars. It was just a fantastic series. I loved it so much. Some of them do have a lot darker themes, and I think that really only book 1 is the one that has that problematic scene, but other than that, all of them were great. I will go ahead and rank them from my favorite to my least favorite. Alright, so I actually really loved the later books in the series more than the beginning books, which you guys can see as I was talking about them. So coming in at number 8 is actually The Duke and I. The first book is my least favorite of the series. I still rated it 4 stars, but this romance was not my favorite out of all of them. I love Simon, but he's not my favorite hero. Coming in at number 2 is The Viscount Who Loved Me. This one, just Anthony was a little too annoying to me, but I still loved it. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars, but not my favorite. Anthony was just a little too much of a mean person to Kate, but it was still a fun romance. I still enjoyed it. Coming in at number 6 is Romancing Mr. Bridgerton. This one was the one I was most excited for, and unfortunately it is the one that I was most let down by because I had such high hopes for Colin and Penelope. It was still really fun. I still gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I just wanted a little bit more from their romance. Then we have It's in His Kiss, which is Hyacinth's story. This one I still really loved. I gave this, I think, what did I say, 4.5, 5 stars? I still really love this one. one, but you can't beat the other books in the series. It's so hard. I'm at book 5 and I'm like, I don't know if I like this more. The top 5 are all super close to me. Then coming in at number 4 is going to be On the Way to the Wedding. I just really loved Gregory's book. I loved how adorable he was. I loved all the Bridgertons we got in here. Such a great romance. Number 3 is going to be An Offer from a Gentleman, Benedict's book. This was my number 1 for so long until I got to 5 and 6 of the series, but this one is just so special, and I really love the romance between someone who is poor and not of high social standing and someone who is the son of a viscount. These two were so hard, but coming in at number 2 is To Sir Philip with Love. I just love Philip so much, and I love Eloise. She's one of my favorite characters in the entire series, but this was so unexpected because we didn't know Sir Philip at all going into this, but I loved it. I loved how it was an epistolary romance to start off with, and she shows up and we have the kids and a single parent romance. I loved everything. And number 1 is gonna go to When He Was Wicked. I know a lot of people don't like this, and a lot of people didn't like To Sir Philip with Love, but they're my absolute favorites. I loved how Michael just loved Francesca so much. Oh, I just loved it, and how there was so much angst and just back and forth because they just are so guilty and just and went through a lot together, and it's just so good. I loved it so much. I wanted more Scotland. I will say I thought this was gonna have a lot more Scotland in here because and he has a cape. I didn't even realize that when I showed it to you guys, but the other cover, the newly published cover, actually has plaid on the cover, but they're barely in Scotland in here. Just gonna point that out there, but I love this one. And that is my Bridgerton series review. Let me know down below your number 1 book of the series. I would love to hear. I also do have a video of my review for the Netflix series if you want to check that out, as well as my recommendations for books to read after binging Bridgerton. So check those videos out. I'll link them down below. I think I'll have them in the cards as well. So that's all I have. As always, thank you so much for watching and have a good day. Bye.